I am Samantha Doherty. I am a graduate student at Liberty University, and this is the Productive and Counterproductive Behaviors in the Workplace assignment. Many recent historical events have affected both the research and the practice in organizational psychology. Some of these events include the coronavirus disease 19 or COVID 19, the death of George Floyd, as well as the Biden presidency. COVID 19 appeared in China in late 2019. But we really didn't start feeling the effects until early 2020, and at that point, it quickly spread worldwide, leading to the global pandemic. It caused many businesses to change how they operate or even force them to shut down, and it really did change what employment looked like for a lot of individuals. Researchers had to quickly shift their focus to study how working from home impacts both productivity as well as teamwork and even mental health. For example, some employees may have thrived in the flexible environment, while others may have struggled with balancing work and life boundaries, and maybe even some loneliness. These insights really push companies to adopt new policies, whether it's hybrid work models or more support for mental health. And it really reshaped how organizations think about their employees and their performance. With regards to practice, organizational psychologists really became extremely important to help organizations adapt to these changes. They supported leaders in managing teams virtually, maintaining engagement, as well as building resilience during the uncertainty. Overall, COVID 19 really helped with the research and practice of organizational psychology. Another recent event was the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis in 2020 by police officer Derek Chauvin. It brought a lot of attention because there was mass protests, there was destruction of property, and it really brought to light the racial inequality in and outside of the workplace. And it really did influence both research and practice in organizational psychology. Research began to focus more on issues like systemic racism at work and biases in hiring, as well as promotion. Studies have examined the impact of microaggression on employee well-being and how inclusive leadership can enhance team performance. This led to really more research and interest in topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. In practice, many organizations turn to organizational psychologists to help guide them in creating a more fair workplace. This also helped with companies running D&I training, conducting bias audits or surveys, and really set up for a more inclusive hiring practices. Companies work to also better supporting underrepresented employees. Those efforts are still ongoing, but there's been a big push towards accountability and long-term cultural change in how organizations handle race, equity, and social justice. Another event was the election of President Joe Biden. On Inauguration Day, Biden was 78 years old, which made him the oldest first term president in history. His time in the office brought a lot of attention to age related issues in leadership as well as the workplace. There are stereotypes that older workers are less capable. So, in organizational psychology research, there's more interest in studying things like aging and performance, or how experience and wisdom can offset declines in speed or maybe the memory. Also, how age diverse teams can perform better when managed well. These findings kind of encourage more organizations to value older employees. In practice, Biden's presidency had really influenced companies to look at age inclusion with regards to other forms of diversity. Organizational psychologists have helped businesses address age bias, in hiring, promotion, as well as in team dynamics. For example, some companies have created mentorship programs and that they pair younger and older employees to promote really that knowledge sharing and counter that age bias. As a result, there's been a shift towards seeing age as more of an asset and less of a barrier in leadership and organizational development. If I was working as a consultant and a recruitment director from a local university called because they wanted to get a more diverse pool of highly qualified faculty applicants. How would I advise them? First, I'd love to learn more about the university and understand what diverse and highly qualified applicants look like to them. We develop a recruiting plan after looking at the organization's strategic plan, their succession plan, their current work employee skills, as well as the market information. The key word here is diverse. And if they're reaching out to me, what they're doing is likely not working. So they'll need to change their approach through things like advertisement, the hiring process, and attraction. First, I'd recommend really looking at how they advertise. You know, what methods and where do they advertise? Is it working? There's many ways to advertise, ads in paper, billboards, word of mouth. There's internet-based recruiting, like using websites such as ZipRecruiter and the use of social media, such as LinkedIn. If they've used one website and it's not working, have they tried others? There's even the opportunity to do on-campus recruitment at other organizations or even hold open houses, where applicants can learn more about the university, meet the faculty, learn about the benefits. Do they offer education benefits for their employees or even their dependents, healthcare, vacation, etc. Then I'd recommend really looking at the hiring process. Is it easy to submit an application? Is it quick? Are there multiple steps in hiring that can cause delays? Such as, an extensive background check. How quick can an individual start? All of these things can influence the applicant pool. It's also important to identify any issues in the hiring process and ensure that the process is streamlined without compromising the quality of applicants. Lastly, I'd really recommend looking at how they attract applicants. How is their organizational image? Are they known for their values, for their employee satisfaction? Can they attract applicants through incentives to include, maybe sign-on bonuses or flexible work arrangements? These things can help the university stand out amongst other organizations that may not offer the same incentives. Really, again, by understanding the university and their needs, while looking at their advertising, their hiring processes, and how they attract applicants, can really help expand their pool of qualified applicants. Some advice I would give to a hiring manager about reducing work-family conflict to ensure high-performing employees stay with an organization as long as possible would really first start with getting to know this person. I truly believe it's important to know your employees and to have conversations with them. What is their identity? What is their background? What do their family dynamics look like? What are things that they like to do for fun? Or what are their stressors? Even what does work-life balance look to them? By knowing your employees, you know how to support them. Some ways to support the employee may be through creating a safe work environment, a fostering team, or even being flexible. The employee should work in an environment that is free from discrimination. They should have equal opportunities and they should feel like they're part of a team. Discrimination and non-inclusive practices can impact employees' performance and it can really affect the employee's job satisfaction, their engagement, and their overall health and well-being. So this is why it's really important that organization needs to ensure that the employees feel accepted, that they feel heard, that they feel valued, and that they're included in decision making. Being part of a team that offers psychological safety is really essential for employee well-being as well as their performance. A supportive, inclusive team climate, combined with things like transformational leadership, help create an environment where individuals feel valued, they feel heard, and even motivated. However, high performing individuals are often given disproportionate share of responsibilities, which can really lead to burnout and over time, they may lose interest. To prevent this, it's really important to distribute, work fairly and to ensure that all team members contribute equitably. And lastly, I'd recommend adopting a flexible approach to support the employee's work-life balance. This includes offering things such as remote work, adjusting work hours, or even a hybrid schedule based on the employee's needs and responsibilities outside of work. By providing these flexible options and encouraging the open communication about individual needs, the organization can really demonstrate the trust, respect, and commitment to equity and inclusion, all of which really help contribute to engagement and retention. Organizational citizenship behavior can be important to overall success. Characteristics such as being dependable, trustworthy, flexible, helpful, relatable, all of those things can really be important to hiring officials. Generally, if you see a person with these traits, you know that they are teachable. However, depending on the position, not everyone has the time or the capacity to teach or provide that thorough training. And that's really why it's important to balance not only these individual qualities, but also the competency and job experience of individuals. As an example, I'm going to use an executive officer. Some of their job descriptions may include serves as an executive advisor to the commander on programs and initiatives within the wing. They plan and conduct staff meetings. They manage executive support resources, services, and activities. And some of the desired skills may be strong collaborator and a good interpersonal communicator. First serves as executive advisor to the commander on programs and initiatives within the wing. I'd really improve it to set clear metrics for the role, such as provides daily briefings to the wing commander, highlighting things such as program risk, budget variances, and resource gaps. For plans and conduct staff meetings, I would improve it to really set standards such as, plans and lead monthly staff meetings or weekly staff meetings with an agenda, at least 48 hours in advance, providing read aheads 24 hours in advance, and ensuring follow up, tasks are documented and executed within, directed timelines. For manages executive support resources, services, and activities, I could be more specific, such as oversees, budget for executive support functions, tracking monthly expenditures with a variance of, maybe less than 5 or 10%. And as far as desired skills of strong collaborator and a good interpersonal communicator, those things are good, but they can be more specific, such as must be able to collaborate or communicate effectively with joint or allied partners. It's also important to add demands of the position, such as may involve irregular hours or travel. Setting these clear metrics, giving specific standards, and including things such as irregular hours, and travel expectations can directly lead to better overall performance in that role. Counterproductive work behavior is when a person consciously decides to engage in behaviors that are really just counterproductive to work, such as misuse of time, theft, destruction of property, and those type of things. Without having specific data, some of these organizational constraints causing the behavior may be either personal based or situation based. Personal based examples may be causes due to anger, such as frustrating conditions in the workplace, lack of self control, or even narcissism. Situation based causes may include lack of company buy in, lack of norms or standards and behavior, poor supervision, and even opportunity. Once identified, some of the things that the company can do to resolve them um, include, you know, one, we talked about lack of buy-in. When employees don't feel, emotionally or intellectually invested in the organization, missions, values, leadership, they're more than likely to disengage. To resolve this, it's important to communicate, how and why they contribute to the overall goals of the company. Recognize the employees' contributions, whether that's intrinsic or extrinsically, to really show that they're valued. Also, maybe provide developmental opportunities. With the lack of standards and discipline, a lot of times there's unclear expectations around work performance, work hours, or even behavior, and there's not always consequences for falling short of those expectations. So employees may test boundaries. To resolve, I think it's important to define clear, consistent standards, establish expectations for work, whether it be the hours, availability, responsiveness, and even deliverables. And it's important to communicate these policies clearly as well as often. Also to enforce standards fairly, making sure that all employees are held to the same expectations. Managers who may be disengaged, inconsistent, disrespectful, even abusive, can directly also drive counterproductive behavior. To resolve this, we need to train our supervisors really leadership skills, whether it's communication, conflict resolution, even empathy. The company must hold these managers accountable and provide safe reporting mechanisms for employees. When there's minimal oversight or accountability, employees have the opportunity to cut corners, especially if they feel that the organization won't notice or may not even care. To fix this, the organization should implement accountability systems to keep track of tasks or performance. They should promote a culture of trust as well as um, just a culture of self management. Overall, it's important to address both the person-based and system-based behaviors, ensuring that there's buy-in, setting standards, and holding people accountable are all ways to reduce the